Welcome to The Explainer. So, what if I told you that being good with money has almost nothing to do with how smart you are? Today, we're going to dive into Morgan Housel's incredible book, The Psychology of Money, and really unpack why building wealth isn't about solving a math problem, it's all about mastering a head game. All right, let's kick things off with the core idea of the whole book. We're all taught that to succeed with money, you got to be smart, right? You need to know the formulas, the strategies, but Housel just flips that on its head. He says it's a soft skill. How you behave is way more important than what you know. And this quote here really nails it. Your own personal experiences with money, that's maybe a tiny, tiny fraction of what's ever happened in the world, but it makes up like 80% of how you think the world works. It's wild when you think about it. And to really see this in action, Housel tells this incredible personal story. And get this, it has absolutely nothing to do with spreadsheets or stock charts. Nope. It's all about luck, risk, and one single decision that seems so small, but ended up changing absolutely everything. So picture this. Housel is 17 years old. He and his two best friends are these amazing ski racers. And like most 17-year-olds, they basically felt invincible. They were out in Lake Tahoe, just chasing that thrill of fresh, untouched snow, ducking under the ropes that pretty clearly say, hey, do not cross. And on one of these runs, it happens. The ground beneath them just starts moving. He has zero control. It was a small avalanche, thankfully, and they all made it down to the bottom totally safe. But you can imagine their hearts are just pounding with this mix of pure terror and, weirdly, exhilaration. I mean, the adrenaline rush must have been insane. And his two friends, Brendan and Brian, they were so pumped up, they were immediately ready for round two. They just looked right back up the mountain and said, let's go do that again. But here's where the story takes a turn. Housel says no. And you'd think it was because he was scared, right? But it wasn't fear at all. It was something completely random, almost silly. He just hated hitchhiking back to the resort. So he tells his friends, hey, you know what? I'll just drive my truck around and pick you guys up at the bottom. His friends never showed up. They were found the next morning, buried under a massive avalanche. And that simple, almost dumb stroke of luck, just a dislike for hitchhiking, is what saved his life. You can imagine that experience just completely shattered his tolerance for risk forever in every part of his life, from how he drives to, of course, how he manages his money. And that's the whole point, see? Our relationship with risk, with money, it isn't shaped by a spreadsheet. It's forged in these deeply personal, emotional moments. It's exactly why two super smart people can look at the very same data, the same investment, and come to completely opposite conclusions. They're not arguing about the math. They're basically speaking different languages, shaped by their own unique pasts. So yeah, that story just perfectly sets up the book's first big truth, which is that being good with money has way less to do with your IQ and everything, and I mean everything, to do with how you behave. And Housel is totally open about this applying to him too. I mean, look at this quote. He's talking about September 2008, the absolute chaos of the financial crisis, and March 2020 when the pandemic crash started. And he says, I would be lying if I said I was not scared shitless. I was. This is a guy who studies this for a living. And it just proves his point. Your temperament, your ability to just keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs, that is so much more important than raw intelligence. And this leads to a really great distinction he makes between being rational and being reasonable. The rational investor, well, they've got the perfect spreadsheet, they've run all the models, but when a crisis hits, they panic and blow everything up. The reasonable investor, on the other hand, they know they're human, they're not a robot, they just want a plan they can stick with so they can sleep well at night. And guess who has a better chance of winning in the long run? So here's the bottom line. Good investing isn't about making these genius-level decisions, it's really just about consistently not screwing up. Seriously? Your long-term success is going to be decided by how you act during that 1 month every decade when everything goes haywire and it feels like the world is ending. Okay, so that brings us to the next big and kind of dangerous idea from the book, this whole art of wanting more. The hardest financial skill there is, it's getting the goalposts to stop moving. Modern capitalism is awesome at creating wealth, but man, it's even better at creating envy. It's like we're all on this treadmill of social comparison, and the problem is, the ceiling just keeps getting higher. You never quite get there. It's a game you can't win by earning more. And Housel explains this with something he calls the man in the car paradox, which is just brilliant. Think about it. When you see someone driving a really fancy car, You're not thinking, wow, that driver is so cool. Nope. What you're really thinking is, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm so cool. We just use their stuff as a stand-in for our own desires. And that's the punchline, right? No one is as impressed with your possessions as you are. They're not really looking at you, they're just using your wealth as a new benchmark for what they want to have. So if the goal isn't just accumulating more stuff, and it's not to impress other people, then what is it? What's the point? Well, this brings us to what might be the single most powerful purpose of money. And the answer is freedom. The highest form of wealth, according to Housel, is the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Having control over your own time. Handling an emergency without breaking a sweat. That is the ultimate dividend that money can pay. And this requires a huge mental shift, right? Because wealth isn't what you see. It's the nice car you didn't buy. It's the expensive watch you didn't wear. Real wealth is the financial assets that haven't been turned into visible stuff yet. It's the independence, the options you have that others just don't. All right, let's tie all of this together with one last and really critical insight for navigating your own financial life. And it's this. The goal is not to be right. It's to be unbreakable. If you can make sure that a bad decision or just a streak of bad luck can't wipe you out, then you get to keep playing the game until the odds eventually fall in your favor. That's it. Survival is the whole game. And here's an iron rule of finance that goes with that. Avoid at all costs taking your cues from people who are playing a different game than you are. A day trader's actions, for example, should mean absolutely nothing to someone who's saving for retirement in 30 years. And yet, we get sucked in by these signals all the time, and it completely messes up our own plans. So I'll leave you with this final thought. You have to ask yourself, what game am I playing? And am I getting influenced by people who are playing a totally different one? Because really, understanding your own goals, your own time horizon, and your own personal definition of enough, that's not just a part of the strategy. That is the entire strategy.